At 18, the roadmap looks clear. A student sits down at a desk, opens a fresh notebook, and begins preparing for a government exam with the expectation that 2 years of hard work will guarantee a lifetime of security. But the timeline begins to stretch. 3 years disappear, then 5, then 8. State vacancies are announced and then frozen. Legal challenges put hiring on hold for years. Before they realize it, the student has spent their entire 20s waiting for a single letter of appointment. That decade is spent in near total isolation. To keep studying, they cut themselves off from friends, family, and the outside world. Their life is reduced to the square footage of a rented room and the repetitive memorization of facts for a test that may never happen. The sheer scale of the competition makes these odds nearly impossible. For a recruitment drive with only 10,000 open positions, it is now common for the state to receive over 5 million applications. It is a mathematical lottery with millions of losers. Millions of students treat these exams as a survival tactic. In an economy where private employment lacks stability and the state provides no safety net, a government desk represents the only reliable shield against poverty. The roots of this crisis start in the classroom. From primary school onward, the education system is built almost entirely around rote memorization, training students to repeat information rather than understand how to apply it. Contrast this with the models used in the US, Japan, or South Korea. Their systems anchor learning in R&D and critical thinking, teaching students how to identify a problem and engineer a solution, rather than just memorizing an answer key. South Korea used this specific focus to transform its economy. By moving away from low-skill labor and investing heavily in science and innovation, they turned a war-torn nation into a global leader in high-end technology. In contrast, the Indian curriculum continues to produce compliant clerks. Graduates leave university with degrees that prove they can follow instructions, but often without the technical skills needed to build something new from scratch. Because the system fails to teach innovation, students are forced to remain job seekers. They enter the economy looking for a vacancy to fill, rather than possessing the tools to create one. When these graduates look to the private sector, they find a massive gap. While neighboring countries built millions of manufacturing jobs to absorb their youth, India's industrial growth hasn't kept pace with the number of people entering the workforce. Small businesses, which should be the primary engine of job creation, are strangled by red tape. Complex licensing, a lack of finance, and bureaucratic corruption make starting a company an exhausting gamble that most young people cannot afford. With the private sector failing to provide enough meaningful roles, millions of youth have nowhere to go but back into the high-stakes gamble of government recruitment. Even within this narrow path, the system is broken. Recruitment processes are often paralyzed for years by opaque bureaucracy and sudden court injunctions that leave applicants in total limbo. Then comes the fatal blow, the paper leak. In the last few years, state and national exams have been compromised by over 70 different leaks, orchestrated by a nexus of corrupt brokers and officials who sell the future to the highest bidder. When students finally protest these stolen opportunities, their frustration is met with state force. Instead of reform, they encounter police batons, further widening the gap between the youth and the institutions supposed to serve them. These continuous scandals dismantle the concept of merit. They tell an entire generation that their effort is secondary to a broker's price tag, leaving behind a profound systemic despair. This diagram tracks the most valuable asset any worker has: time. Between the ages of 18 and 30, a typical global worker accumulates skills and rising wages. But for the Indian exam taker, that line remains flat, a decade of productive life held in suspended animation. The gap between those two lines represents a massive economic hole. It signifies 10 years of unearned wages, lost work experience, and the millions of small businesses that were never allowed to begin. This systemic paralysis is a national crisis. By keeping millions of young people out of the workforce during their most productive years, the country is actively draining its own potential. Breaking this cycle requires a fundamental shift in perspective. Relying on a broken recruitment machine without a plan B has become too dangerous a gamble for any young person to take. The individual pivot must be towards skills that the modern world actually values, moving away from rote memorization and toward biotechnology, AI, and entrepreneurship allows the youth to bypass the state's bottlenecks entirely. Societally, the demand must shift. Leaders and the media must be held accountable for job creation and transparent hiring, rather than being allowed to distract the public with divisive cultural debates. The machinery of the state is slow to reform. However, as more people move from a desperate wait for a government seat toward building marketable expertise, the individual regains the decade they were told to gamble away. Breaking the cycle starts when the wait ends.